Hello, everybody. This is the Mobile People Community event dedicated to knowledge sharing. And today we have a great speaker, which is actually kind of interesting to have a speaker speaking about being a speaker at the conference. Hello, Elena.
Hello. Nice to
Um,
be here.
yeah, we won't be talking much before the actual presentation, but just for those who are interested, Elena had couple of speaking talks recently. She participated in a couple of events, and she will be talking about that on her presentation. With that, I think we can probably start, and then just for those who are watching us live, you can use chat section to ask your questions. We will be answering them at the end, or you can do send your questions later, and we will probably contact you somehow in the comments. So thank you. Let's start. Alina, stage is yours.
Thank you very much. And hi everyone who's watching. Thank you very much for joining. My name is Alina. I'm an iOS engineer at EPAM, and I'll be talking about how sharing your knowledge can help you grow as an engineer, and why is it important, and how does it work in general. So what should you do? So here's something about me. I work at EPAM for about 2.5 years, and I'm a passionate programmer. I try to learn new things every day. And also, I absolutely love iOS developers community. So that's why I'm sure we all, as parts of the iOS community, we all have to give back as well. That's what I do to give back. So I gave 2 tech talks with EPAM Kiev mobile community. I also attended 2 international iOS or Swift conferences this year as a speaker. And I also try to post something on my Medium page. It's not really regular yet, but I hope to improve soon. The plan for this talk is the following. So the benefits of public speaking and attending professional conference. Then we'll see how to make your talk more or less perfect. Then I'll provide an overview of my past experience and how the recent conferences went. And then we'll see some highlights and lessons that I'd like to share with you. So let's start with the main question today: why speak? So there are multiple answers to that. They're really different and individual for everyone, but there's still something that may be beneficial for all of you. So the first reason of probably many of them is confidence. Public speaking makes you confident as a person, and it also helps you practice self-presentation, self-control, and even English if it's your second language. That's also great. So with this practice, you'll feel much more confident on stage or even when just screen sharing. So it's a serious step out of comfort zone, and especially if you speak in person, not online. And this is what happens with most of the most of the technical conferences now. So they're all offline. And it also can be helpful and beneficial for you when participating in client demos, for example, or any other type of your work presentations. You also need practice, and conferences can provide it to you. The next reason is knowledge. So it may sound weird, but you can really learn so much when preparing your presentation. So it often happens that your first idea transforms somehow or grows into something different, or you find some information when preparing that you didn't know about before, or even some new technologies can be released. This actually happened with me before my last talk, because I applied before the WWDC this year, and there was some awesome releases that I really had to show in my presentation. And also, what's really important is that you can talk about some people after your presentation, or before your presentation, with some knowledgeable experts, some fellow developers at the conference, and you can get from that something as well. And this actually leads us to the next benefit. The next benefit being networking. Here at EPAM, we have really lots of awesome specialists around us with whom we can talk, share our knowledge or ideas or whatever we want. But there are also many great developers outside, so out there in the outer world, and you get to speak to them. You get to speak to them at conferences. You can share your ideas, you can listen to their ideas or knowledge, you can ask questions, participate in discussions, and even come up with the idea for your next talk. So during the SwiftConf this year, there was a friend of mine, also a speaker, asking fellow developers what will be interesting for them to hear in his next presentation, for example. And also you can find friends with the same interests, and I think it's really cool. And probably the last benefit I would like to highlight is feedback. And feedback can come in really different forms. Some conferences gather direct feedback about each talk in some form, and you may ask the organizers to share it with you, but it's more of a rare case. Also, lots of people come to you before or after your talk to ask some questions, share their thoughts on your presentation, which is a good thing, not a bad thing, because usually they don't criticize you very much. But you get the first-hand information of what's interesting for people, what's bothering them, and how you talk may be useful to the community as well, to them specifically. Summing it all up, technical and professional conferences, they allow you to boost your confidence, your public speaking skills. They help you learn of the latest development trends and the industry updates, also make valuable connections and gain feedback on your ideas or even on the apps you're working on. So with all of these benefits, there comes really a different question. Why not speak when you get everything here? But let's move on and discuss how to make your talk perfect. If you already decided to speak, you have to really, really work on your perfect talk. But before you can even start working on your talk, you have to understand how you get into the conference. So how can you become a speaker? What should you do before? So there are specific steps that you need to follow to become a speaker at some conference, and you should know them. So the process goes this way. There are about 15 different iOS or Swift conferences happening every year, and there are also many, many more for other technologies, such as different programming languages, different platforms, different design updates, and even management. So there are really lots of different conferences. And these conferences usually happen annually, about at the same dates, and the organizers invite about 10 to 30 speakers. I've never heard of less, but I've heard of some conferences that invite more than 30 speakers even. The number may differ, that depends. And there are really many resources to look for these conferences. So the first, what you have to do is just Google, but then you'll see that there are really lots of websites such as dev events or Constext websites. And there are even apps in at least App Store, but I think for Android, there are some apps as well that showcase all the conferences available and also provide some links for you to apply or the information on how the conferences went last year and so on. So that there is really lots of information out there and you just have to look for it. Then there's this step that's called call for papers, and usually the call for papers opens a couple of months before the conference date, and you need to fill your application with the information about your talk, and this information usually includes these 5 parts, but maybe more or maybe less as well. So the first part is the talk title. It's really, really important to come up with the great and self-explanatory title. You can get all creative here, but try not to overthink it. So it can be nice to add some wordplay, but try to keep yourself in line. So it's not required. The main goal of your talk title for it to be self-explanatory. That's pretty much it. Then the next part is the talk pitch. It's something I've seen only for a couple of conferences, so definitely not all of them, but you can still ask to provide it. Usually the talk pitch is limited to about 200 words. So basically you need to sell your talk here. So you don't need to provide a thorough description, and you really can't provide a thorough description in 200 symbols or words, but you have to explain why it's interesting for you, why it's interesting for developers, and why it's interesting for the organizers. What I mean by why it's interesting is that you may find some niche topic that is really, really fun for you to explore, but you also need to make sure that the audience will also find this topic fun and interesting and even a little bit useful, because you're speaking not only for yourself, but also for the audience there. The next step is the next part of an application is talk description, and it's mandatory there. You have to provide them information about what you're going to talk about, your ideas, your main parts of the talk. So it's something that will probably be seen by the attendees on the website or the schedule if your talk is selected. So it's something that will be visible not only for the organizers, but of course, this is something that organizers are looking into in the selection process. So you have to combine something interesting for the audience there, some catchwords or maybe some specific parts or topics, but also you have to be thorough here and make organizers like your talk from the description. Then there's also the part of description details. It's an additional details to your description. It's something that won't be visible for the attendees, only for the organizers. It's usually you are usually asked to provide some additional information on the topic, maybe add some specific problems that you've covered or you're tackled when preparing this topic, or the reasons why you think this talk will be interesting for the audience, and anything, basically anything you want to add to make your application stronger. And the last part is called related publications. I've actually seen it only for one conference, but I didn't check all of them yet. Basically, you have to add some related articles, related talks, maybe some past talks from different conferences that cover the similar topic. And it's needed because it can be used to highlight the community interest in the talk, in your talk, or the importance of it for the community. So I really like the idea behind this part of an application, and I hope that more conferences will include it in their applications. Usually some specific websites can be used for applications for call for papers. There are two main of them, I'd say, the Sessionize website and the paper call website, but also it can be, the application can be provided in a Google form, and it's also perfectly fine. So the structure is pretty much the same, and you don't have to worry about providing your credentials to the website or something like that. So just filling out the Google form. But still, it's pretty simple in both of cases. There's also one thing that I wanted to say, that you have to remember that each conference is different, each application is different, and each talk is different as well. So there's no recipe for the best application or always accepted application. You need to just fill it according to the requirements and hope for the best. There are really billion reasons for your talk not to be selected, and I'm being optimistic here, but there are really lots of reasons for it. But I know for sure that it's never because the talk is not interesting or somehow bad. It's just because the main topic of the conference was different or something else. So really lots of reasons. You have to still believe in your idea, in your talk, and provide the best application, the best description you can. So after you've thought of an idea, you're crafted your application, and maybe your talk was even already selected, you can for sure go celebrate, and then you have to start working on your presentation. You may already have your talk and the main idea because it's the information you had to provide before, but you probably don't have the content yet. It's really a rare case that you already have the presentation completely finished by the application time. So you have to start working on it right now. But before you do, you have to think of how will you do it. So you need to form your thoughts somehow into a real presentation, into the slides, into maybe some text or some preparation. To form your thoughts and to craft the best presentation, you can use the next tips that I personally use, and I really hope they will be useful for you. So the first thing is reasoning. What I mean by this is really write down the main reason why you have decided to give this particular talk in the first place. It can be some interesting issue that you found at work, or it may be a newly released technology that you've already played around with and you would like to share something about it. Or it can be some topic that's just interesting for you and you want to make other people interested in it as well. This reason, it will be your main catch. So you'll build up a storyline later in your presentation. Maybe you will come up with some code examples or different applications of this technology, but you always have to keep in mind what makes your talk special. So your main reason. It's of course different for everyone here. The second tip or trick is ask additionally. So this step sometimes may be omitted, but after you thought of your perfect talk, you may need some of a reality check. So just look up your friend or your manager if you're in the same field and try to ask them what will be interesting for them regarding the particular topic you've chosen. So there may be a long-standing issue that you don't know about, or there may be some new update that you haven't heard about before or yet. Whatever, it can be anything, but gather the suggestions and then you can filter them out. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use them, you have to show everything that people shared with you, but you can find something interesting during this process. Then think of a structure for your talk. Usually the talk agenda has about 3 to 5 subtopics. However, when breaking down your material and preparing, you can think of even more, and it will definitely help you. So break down your ideas, your text, your information that you want to share into subtopics, and it will really, really help you structure your talk in your head and then during your presentation. You don't need to write any specific text at this point, but you need to think of what can you say for each part of your talk. And also, please don't forget to add some examples, because it really is not, I can't say it's not interesting, but it's difficult to follow the presentation that has only some basic information and no examples at all. So please provide some examples there. I would also like to share some bonus steps I find useful. The first one is use presenter's notes. You don't need to write every word that you're going to say, although you can do it if you want, of course, if that helps. But at least you need to write the keywords for each slide, and it will make you much more confident when presenting, when sharing this talk with the audience. So this way you'll be able to kind of mold your talk on the flow, on the way, but you still won't forget or won't miss any important parts that you wanted to share. That's a really useful thing that I didn't think of before I started really speaking at conferences. The second suggestion is practice your talk before. This may sound obvious, I know it sounds obvious, but you will want to skip this step after you've finished with your presentation. Why so? Because when researching the information, when crafting the slides and maybe even presenter's notes already, you'll repeat yourself, you'll repeat this information and you'll write it down somewhere and you'll become more and more confident, but this still is not the same as just taking your presentation and practicing it from the start to from the beginning to the end. So this is different, and you have to do this because preparing your presentation doesn't actually mean saying it out loud, but you have to say it, you have to practice, and you'll be thankful for that later. And also one more additional part in that, it's really possible to hear when you're listening to some other people's presentation. You can really hear if they didn't practice it before. So please practice. And probably the last tip from me here is be passionate. Be passionate about your talk. Be passionate about your presentation, about your ideas, and even about yourself on stage, because it's extremely hard to talk about something you're not into. So on the something that you don't find interesting or enlightening or at least fun, it's really hard to talk about. But on the other hand, if you're passionate about your topic and your talk, and you'll feel inspired, and so will the audience when you're speaking. That's pretty much it for the tips. And let's see how the conferences usually go with the SwiftConf 2023 example. Each conference may have a specific focus each year, depending on the new technologies or industry updates. So you have to maybe check for it before applying if your topic is relevant to this year's conference, I don't know, agenda or something like that. So that's something to keep in mind. So how SwiftCon 2023 went? The first day was all about SwiftUI. So there were different topics and details covered, but still there was a main storyline, SwiftUI. I think you can even see it in the schedule. So there are 6 talks, and 5 of them have the word SwiftUI in the name. The last one was also with SwiftUI. It just wasn't added to the talk title. The second day was more diverse and showcased more niche topics. I call this day a fun day, of course, but that depends on your definition of fun. It was really different from the first day because the topics covered the health frameworks, the app size, the accessibility, and much more. So it was really diverse. My talk was, of course, on the fun day, and it was focused on the GPU programming and Metal framework. It's something I find very interesting and worth trying for all iOS engineers. I've had people come to me at the conference before my talk, because my talk was the second day. I had really the long first day of talking and communicating, and people came to me and told me that they're looking forward to my talk, not because they also think it's fun or interesting. On the contrary, because they think that Metal is scary and Metal is hard, and it's something that they never tried because first reason they didn't need it, and the second reason because it's scary and hard. But that's not actually true. So you have to try it, at least check it, and then you'll understand why it's so interesting. So how the talk went? We've discussed the concept of GPU programming and where, how, and why we can use it. I've tried to explain the ideas behind the GPU programming in general, not only in iOS or macOS or whatever, because there's a backstory behind the GPU programming in general. And I've also shared how the GPU is built and why it's built this way. So how it's prepared and it's specifically tailored for the tasks it's used for now. And also we've discussed why hardware matters, because sometimes we can write really cool code, algorithms, and anything, but hardware can limit us, and we have to take this into consideration. After that, we've took a look at Metal API as well as Metal shading language and Metal performance shaders. These are basically the main tools that Apple provide us with for GPU programming. And also we've covered some main and well-known frameworks. You can see them here on the slide. They are actually, all of them, they're built on top of Metal. I'm sure you know these frameworks and maybe even use them, but maybe you didn't think what's the base under them, and that's Metal. Everything is here on top of GPU programming. And after that, we've covered some examples of the usage of Metal and GPU programming in iOS. And These examples, they were covering the newest technology probably possible for iOS at least. This was specific, and this was different and interesting because since the Metal was introduced in 2014, it was a breakthrough, but it was only a breakthrough for gaming, mostly for mobile gaming. But since then, a long time went, and it's not a niche technology anymore. This year's WWDC brought us an awesome integration of Metal and SwiftUI, and we probably cannot think of any more excuses not to try them, because what can be simpler than SwiftUI and a little bit of Metal there? Of course, you have to keep in mind that this all is available from iOS 17 plus and macOS 14 plus. But I think you can try it, at least somehow play with it. It doesn't mean that you need to go and use it in your production projects here, but at least try something. It's really, really fun. The other talks were about something new as well. The speakers covered a really wide range of technologies, tricks, architecture tips, and much, much more. The talks were really, really balanced and professional. So no matter what your focus is in iOS development, you could really find something useful there, or maybe some insights or suggestions or whatever. I'm going to comment a couple of talks here, but of course it's difficult to bring the 2 days of the conference in the short talk today. So just 3 of the talks will be covered only. But you probably will get the understanding on how the conference went, what could you hear there, what insights can you come up with, and so on. So the first talk to highlight is an awesome talk by Joseph on SwiftUI and architecture. And it highlighted the importance of embracing the new technology while still keeping your apps nice, clean, and well architectured. In this talk, Joseph showcased the how to identify and how to separate the presentation layer from other layers, basically. How to migrate from delegates, callbacks, and whatever messy code we have there to publisher subscriber architecture, and also ensure the testability of our code, and how to gradually integrate SwiftUI in our apps because it becomes more and more production ready. So it's something that you will probably need in the next couple of years or even further. So you need to integrate SwiftUI more and more now, and you need to know how to do that. So that's why it was really, really interesting. The next was a talk by Paul Hudson. I'm pretty sure you know who he is. And his talk was also about SwiftUI, but also about how each update, each Swift update or SwiftUI update or any other framework update brings us something new and shiny and beautiful, but so not supported in previous iOS versions. He showed us a simple application that he created after his recent trip to Japan. And then he gradually improved it with some live coding, a little bit video coding, and he fixed a lot of UI bugs there with extremely new SwiftUI tricks or features that personally I didn't even know existed. Because they were also presented, some of them were presented during the SwiftUI update this year's WWDC, some were presented last year, but still there's a lot of functions, a lot of modifiers, and everything that you probably didn't hear about before. And last but not least, there was a really enlightening talk from Bruno from Spotify. He explained us how important app size may be and why we as a developers should pay attention to the app size. And he also shared how big companies as Spotify keep the size of their apps in check. And spoiler alert, they have really big teams working on that. And how we can do the same for our apps, even if we're single developers working on pet projects, or if we're working on big production applications in our work, we can apply some tricks that he showed us. And his talk was specifically focused on the Swift language itself, covering common traps that language can cause and how the language actually affects the app size. So how your code specifically affects the app size. It was really, really interesting. And also here, if you didn't read the photo here, so it says that 70% of people consider the size of an app before downloading it, and actually it's 85% of the world's population. And basically for every 6 MB increase, the install conversion drops by 1%. It's the statistics for Android because Apple doesn't share any statistics with us regarding the app size and download conversion, or any information that you can use to come up with this conversion yourself. But still it's pretty much impressive. Of course, there were more great talks covering the Swift UI topics, different Swift UI topics, accessibility, some of the newly released frameworks, house frameworks, a lot of things. And I believe that each and everyone from the audience heard something useful, or at least something interesting there. I've seen many discussions and questions after the talks, before the talks, some of them even during the talks, and it made this conference a really personal experience. So it's also important to note that specifically SwiftConf, it's a really small conference, limited to about 100 attendees, and they do it on purpose. So when given the opening talk, the organizers shared with us that one of their main goals for the conference is to make us all know each other by the end of the second day. And I'm pretty sure they succeeded. I feel like I've talked to 100 of people during these 2 days. So what's next? Well, that depends on you, actually. I really hope that I've encouraged some of you to try yourself as a speaker. It's a really invaluable experience, and it's beneficial both to you and to the iOS or Swift community. I also hope that even if some of you are not ready to speak yet, you'll check out the local conferences. You can go visit and see everything that I was talking about here yourself. And probably one more thing from me. There are really great opportunities here at EPAM to speak. You just need to express your interest somehow, and there will be a lot of people to support you, to guide you, to help you prepare, and that can be a really great starting point. That's pretty much it from my side. I'm thankful again for you that you are watching, that you're joining today, and I'm really happy to answer all of your questions if you have any.
Great talk, as always, and thank you for sharing all the information for how to prepare for the conference, and also your personal your personal view on how to attend those. I have one question which might be interesting to those who never did these talks. Can you share a little bit your how you felt after you gave your first public talk? Like what was the feeling there?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's really, as I said, it's an invaluable experience. So it's something different. It's really inspiring, because as soon as you are on stage, well, at least for me, as soon as I was on stage, I was really nervous, because it was something that I never done before. But as I started to speak, I became more and more, I know, comfortable on stage and more calm. But after I finished, it was a great feeling of something, I don't know, something accomplished, something achieved, because it's really, I'd say it's a milestone in your, well, probably not career, but at least in your professional experience. So it's something that motivates a lot. Also, when you gather the feedback, when people come to you and say that, well, that was a nice talk, even if they, I don't know, are not interested in the technology at all, they still share their thoughts and their, I don't know, experience related. So it's something that's really inspiring. That's probably the feeling that I felt.
Great. Thank you. We have a couple of things from the audience to you. We do not have much of the questions, so I probably suggest you maybe you can like guide us on should we expect your like next talks somewhere in the future, and where people can find you if they want to like see your work somewhere.
Yes, so mostly I would recommend to check out my Medium page. I had some articles with the EPAM mobile community as well together. We published some of them and also some on my own, but that's probably the main source of information from me. I'm not sure I have any other talks planned yet, but I will be working on that. And as soon as I get some updates, I will share them. So you can find me on Telescope or whatever source of communication you prefer. And also, if you will have some questions, I will be happy to answer them there as well later.
Thank you very much. That was really inspiring talk, and thanks everybody who are watching us live. And if you're watching this in the recording, yeah, please contact Elena, and you might ask some questions on how to start your personal journey into being a speaker at public conferences. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. One more thing that I probably forgot to say is that how was the first conference? Why did I apply to the first conference? It's actually because I saw some post in EPAM channel or EPAM chat, the mobile community chat, that somebody shared the list of the conferences that will happen soon, and that's how I actually find the first application and filed the first application, and that's how I was selected. So yeah, also you can use EPAM sources to find this information. It's really there. You just have to look for it.
Right. Yeah. That's actually true. I mean, you already said that we at EPAM have a like quite great communities, and mobile community especially. So again, thank you very much. Really inspiring, and hopefully we will see more speakers and more talks from you as well. And we will definitely share the links to your Medium page and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.